Hello, in this tutorial we're going to create something very cool using JavaScript, and this is just to get you used to using JavaScript and to figure out how functions work and to have some fun. So if we click over here, this is what we are going to be creating today. So as you can see, very simple. As I click this button, my background changes. Okay, so it's randomly changing. So let's look at how we can begin this process. The first thing I'm going to do, and what I should always do before I start an actual project, is to create a folder. So you can see here that my folder is called Learn.js, and I'm literally going to create a folder within this because I'm going to have more than one project going, and this is going to be called my color changer. We could call this, we could use the British U. Just to keep life easier, we're going to just use the word color as in the Americans. We're going to pretend to be Americans today. So within that main project folder, so I should actually even put the word here, project. Okay, color changer project. And inside that folder, I'm going to create 3 files. So the first one is going to be called my CSS, all lowercase. The next one is going to be JS. And then what I'm going to do is I'm now going to create my HTML index page, which is my home page. So what I'm going to do is I'm using Visual Studio Code. You can use Atom, you can use any program you like, as long as you've got a code editor that you are comfortable with, that you know how to basically run. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to say Control S, and immediately I'm going to navigate to the project that I just created, so Learn.js, color changer project, and inside this main folder, I'm going to call this index.html. Okay, so there we go. I've set up my project and now I'm ready to roll. My next thing is to obviously come into my index file and then create those other files. So let's quickly do that before we do anything in our index. So I'm going to go File, New File, and again Control S, and this I'm going to save in my CSS. So I'm going to start with my CSS and I'm going to call it my style.css. Again, you can call it anything you like as long as you are consistent and remember what you've named it. So you can see here it says .css. You can also see that here's the name for me just now when I go and link it in my index.html. Next thing I'm going to do is create the last file that I need, Control S, and this is going to be my JavaScript file. So again, I'm navigating to that JavaScript file and I'm going to call this, it can be called script, it can be called app, it can be called anything. I'm going to call it my script.js. Alright, so there we go. If I go and look inside my folders now, here's my styles, they're all empty, here's my JavaScript, and then here's my index. So let's quickly set that up. You can also see them here. Very useful to check my name so that I know that I'm being consistent. So the first thing I'm going to do in my HTML is I'm going to create an actual HTML document. So again, what do we need? We need an HTML tag. I'm hitting tab on my keyboard just to kind of speed up the process. Inside this, I would need my head. Right, inside my head, I'm going to need a title because I'm like that today. And I'm going to call it change my color, and let's spell it like the Americans. So remember, it's always good practice to just add that title so that you know what it's going to be. I need a head. I also then need a body, so that's kind of important. Okay. So there's my body and there's my head, and again I could go and format these things nicely just so that I can I have more control. So I can see what's going on, because that's what's very important right now, is to see what's going on. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to now link and make sure that my actual files are linked correctly. So again, whenever I can, I will always add in comments. So I'm going to say link to my CSS style, or my CSS is style sheet. Just so that I always comment, just so that when I come back, and I try and explain what I'm doing, not only for you, but also for myself. So as you go along, take the time, make comments, make sure you know what's going on in your actual documents, just to give you help. If I ask you to open this in another 5 years from now, will you still know what's going on? Yes, you will, because you have created these amazing comments. Okay, so when we create a link, when we create a link to our actual CSS, we're going to make sure that we remember the name, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a link. Okay, and basically our link is going to start with rel, and I could be pushing enter, but I'm actually just typing this out. What is this? This is a style sheet. Okay, and then again, just to be safe, I put in the type. So yes, what is this? I push tab just to save some time. It is a text/CSS file, and then the last thing is, where is this sitting? It's my href. So again, if I hit tab, now I need to remember the name. Okay, sometimes when you're working on specific, like if you're working in atom or brackets, you may need to use dots to find the directory. I know that I've stored this in my CSS folder, okay, in my main directory, which is where I am now, and I know that it's called my capital S style.css. Okay, and how do I know that? Well, I can see it here. Okay, and then I also just need to close this guy. So that should work now. How can I test that this is working? Well, I can literally go to my body and I can create an H1, and I can then just say hi. I can go into my style and I can say H1, and I can just make the color blue. Okay, and if I control S, and then I go to my actual file, so here's my index file, and I open it with my browser. I'm going to close the old guy. Nothing is showing, so that's quite a problem. What have I done wrong? I probably haven't saved it. Yes. So if I save everything and I come back, you can see there that it is working. So I'm just going to keep this on the side here for you so that we can just work this out nicely. So let's just do that for now. I probably should have done this beforehand. There we go. Okay, so now you can kind of see, yes, it's working. Another way is to control and click on this actual style sheet and it should open for you. So that's how you kind of know, you can test if your actual style sheet is working. So happiness, we know that that's working. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to delete this guy because I don't need it really, is I'm going to now link my JavaScript file. Okay, and so again, what am I going to do? Because I'm a good citizen of a digital planet that I think I live on, I'm going to say here, link to my JavaScript file. Okay, just so that I know what is what. And obviously my JavaScript link needs to be at the very end of my document, just to avoid problems. And how I'm doing that is it's in my script tag. As you can see, I've broken something, but there we go. So here in my script tag, I'm going to be linking it. Make sure that you jump one back, okay, because you need to link it in the actual script tag. So here I'm going to say src, which is for source. And again, if I hit tab, does it for me. Where is this JavaScript file? Well, it's in JS, that JS folder that I created. And it's called my script.js. So whatever you've named your JavaScript, that is what should be working. Again, how can I test this? If I say control click, hooray, it is opening. So there we go. My first step is set up. Pause it here and just make sure that you've set up all of these things correctly before we carry on, just so that we are together. Cool, so now that we're all on the same page, let's carry on. What we're going to do is we're going to create some HTML elements that we can then style, and then after that we are going to use some JavaScript to call them and change the color. So I know at the moment, again, I'm going to make a comment, and I'm going to say, what do I need? Well, I need to create a button, and I need to have a title and a title, so that my person, that is definitely not how you spell that, so that my person has something to interact with. Okay, so let's do that. The first thing that I need is I'm going to need a button, and that is literally a button. So here's my button, and I'm going to give it a class name. Why am I doing that? So that later I can call it in both my CSS and my JavaScript. So my class name for this is going to be color B, capital T, B, T, N. Again, you can name this anything you like, as long as your naming is consistent, and that when you're calling that JavaScript, creating that JavaScript function, and calling this body element later, that it is the same thing. Cool. So we've got our button name, and then what we're going to do is we're actually going to add in something for our person to read and know that they must click on. So click on me. Okay, and who knows what's going to happen when you do click on me, but again, we at least have our title and we have a button. All right, so let's see. Perfect. Now comes the hard part. Let's check if it is actually there, and I have actually spelled the word button right, because that's not how you spell it. So button, not button. Good times. All right, so let's check that everything is working. I'm going to refresh, and here is my button, and I can see that when I click on it, nothing happens. But it does seem to be set up correctly. Fantastic. So again, pause here if you need to, and just make sure you get a button to work and you have a title. Great, now that we are together, let's go to our style sheet. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to create some style. So again, there are many ways to do this. I'm just using a few different ways to actually style things. So firstly, what I want to do is I want to center this button, and obviously my button is inside my body. So I'm going to basically center it by using center height, making the minimum height 100 VH, which is a unit, a standard unit of measurement, and it's basically looking at the percentage of my window and saying let's get that to be specific to 1% of my window. So you can go and check out on W3 Schools what VH stands for. We could do anything we like, but I'm just showing you a different way. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a display, and my display is going to be flex. So I'm literally turning this into a flex object. Again, easy for when I need to get it to respond to things. And then I'm going to justify content. Where am I justifying it to? The center. Okay, and I can't spell center to save my life, so I really do get it to do it for me. And then I'm going to align items, which is whatever is in my body, which is literally just a button right now, which is fantastic, to the center. Again, not going to try and spell that. Have I spelled this right? Align items. There we go. Always just rather let it help you, but you need to know what you're doing. So there we have my body. Let's have a look. If I Control S and I refresh this, fantastic. My button is now in the middle of my page, and it'll be in the middle no matter where I go, which is great. Just one way to center your content. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to give this button some life. So again, it was called color BTN, right? So if I go back to my HTML, there I gave it a name of color BTN. So that's color BTN. Also, I'm using a dot because it is a class. So let's have a look at what we can do. Firstly, let's organize the padding. Okay, so my padding all round, well actually just, yeah, all round I'm going to say 10 pixels by 10 pixels, just so that there's some space around my button and the text. My border is quite important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it to be 3 pixels, please. Solid. So again, these are just the values of a border, and then I'm going to create a specific color, which I know is like a gray, FE, FE, FE. Okay, it's a white, it's not really, it's an off-white. We're being very specific here. So there we go. If we say Control S, we probably won't see much difference, but we can see that our button is starting to take shape. And again, you guys can play with this, do whatever you want. You don't have to follow these rules as long as you know what they're doing. So again, nothing really changed. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to then change my border radius. What does that mean? I want my border to be a little bit curved, so 7px. Again, let's have a look at that change. How cool is that? So I've given my border radius a bit of a rounded edge. And then also I'm going to just say my color text, because I want this to be on a background, so a darker background, so that it looks really fancy. So again, that color is going to be that FEFE. Thank you for remembering. And then the next thing is obviously my background. So, and it's just the word background. And this background, I'm actually going to get really fancy here and show you how RGBA works. Okay, so RGBA literally will add in some kind of transparency for me. So if let's see if this is going to work. If I just say black, so 000 is black, that's the value, and my last, so red, green and blue must all be 0, which equals to black, and then my last is the alpha. So if I say something like 0.6, we will see that we have some kind of a transparent situation happening here. So let me see if that worked. You can see that it's actually transparent. So whenever the background of my color changes, it's going to have a cool effect on that button. So that's my background. Let's make this a bit bigger. So my font size, I'm going to use REMs. REMs again is a unit of measurement, and it's a percentage of the original, which is the default of my body. Go and check out what REMs are if you don't know. They're definitely not that band that makes you go to sleep, because their music is just so chilling. Then I'm going to say text transform. Why? Because I want to be fancy, and you can see that I can create capitalize. So now let's have a look at how this is looking. Okay, so you'll see that click on me, it's capitalized my text just on the beginning letters, and then I'm going to say cursor, and again I must make sure I spell it, and you can see that my cursor, I don't want it to just be, as you can see, a arrow. I'd like to inform my users that when they hang over this button, it is actually something you can click. So I'm going to change it into a pointer, and let's have a look at what happens if I refresh. You can see that it becomes a hand. It's very cool. Okay, and then the last one I'm going to do is I'm going to create an outline. Sometimes if I'm using Chrome, there will be a weird outline, and I don't want that. So just to make sure that there's no outline when someone actually activates this thing, I'm making sure that it's off. And then finally, I'm going to give you a second now to get this all down. Finally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually add a hover state. So remember, we have different states when it comes to buttons. So when someone hovers over this button, I want something cool to happen, and I literally want the background. That's not how you spell background. I want the background to also have a transparency. So not a transparency, just an RGB color of 0, 0, 0. So when they actually hover over it, I want it to go black. Okay, so let's have a look if this is working. as they hover over it, it goes black. And when I click on it, nothing happens. Fantastic. So pause the video here. Make sure that you've checked all of your spelling and that you've added semicolons, which are your full stops behind every one of your properties. And when you're ready, we will carry on. So pause it here and then let's keep going. Great, welcome back. So let's go to our final phase, and that would be getting our button to actually work. So we're going to go to our script situation, and we're going to now add some things. Before we start with our JavaScript, we need to kind of logically order what we're going to do and have a plan of attack, is what I like to call it. So a plan of attack means, okay, what are my steps? What do I need? What do I need to do? And I will literally use comments to help me along this process. So what I need is I need to target my button, because I have a button that I'm going to, something needs to happen to this button, and then I'm also going to target my background, because that's how this is working, right? So if I think about it logically, that's not how you spell background. If I think about it logically, every time a person clicks on my button, there must be something that happens. So obviously that already tells me that I'm going to need an event listener. Okay, so because what am I, where I'm listening for? I'm listening for my actual mouse to click. So I'm going to need an event listener. Okay, and it needs to be on my click. So already that's kind of helping me. I'm also going to need to create an array that will hold all my colors that I'm going to choose. Okay, let's spell it that way. So that when a person clicks, it looks in a certain array and it randomly chooses a color, and then basically kind of gives it back. So what am I trying to say? I need to then grab the variable that I've created, grab the variable name, and then create a callback function. Create a callback function. So that when my person clicks on it, calls the variable name, which is somewhere up here I'm about to create, and then does something for me. Okay, so there I have a kind of an idea of what I need to do. It's always good to have these as steps, then you can kind of know, okay, wait, I haven't left anything out. I kind of know what I need to do. So let's get started. I obviously need to target a button and target my background. How do I do this? Well, I'm going to call a variable, and I'm going to use a constant, or const as we call it, and it's going to be called color and btn. Okay, because where am I getting this from? Well, if we go back here, we can see that I've given it a class name of btn. So again, that's where I've got this from. So color btn, where is this? This is in my document. Okay, so I need to go and say the word document, and I'm going to use a dot, and I'm going to use my query selector, and I'm going to say I need you to look for this class that I've already created called dot color btn. Okay, so we literally have just called it, we've just created a variable, and we've called it color btn. So this is our variable. Where is it? Well, it's our actual color button. Okay, so next thing, so we've done the first objective. The second objective is to target the background. We need another variable, so const, and this is going to be called body background bcg. Okay, and I'm going to also call it document. Document, again, I need a query selector. And what am I calling this time? Well, think about it. What am I changing? I'm changing the whole body of the background of my whole HTML. So Therefore, I'm going to use the selector called body. Okay. And now this is at least what I've done. I've created my targets and everything looks fantastic. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control S, because that's always a good idea. I'm going to first create my array. So let's just take this here, put that there, just so that I have, oh, sorry, I dropped them all down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my array. And these are also going to be a variable, okay? And I'm going to call them colors. And I'm going to make my array. So again, how do we do that? We use the brackets, and then we give these the colors of our background. So we have yellow. I'm going to separate them by a comma, red, comma, and let's add yellow, and let's also add, just for the sake of being weird, I'm going to also use hexadecimal color, which I'm not sure what it is going to turn out to be, but whatevs. So there, oh, and that also needs to live inside single quotes, don't forget that. Okay, so there is my array. So basically what's going to happen is my function is going to look for a specific color in, or a specific name in this array. I shouldn't have two things called yellow. Sorry about that. So I've got yellow, red, green, and then also a hexadecimal color, just to show you that it doesn't have to always be these generic guys. So again, pause the video, make sure that you are at this point with me before we carry on. Okay, so now it's time for us to actually create our event listener. And our event listener is very important in our whole setup, because if we don't have something that's listening to and waiting for our user, we are wasting our lives. So I'm going to create an event listener that's going to be attached to our btn variable. And basically I'm going to say add event listener. So there it is. Again, I'm lazy and I'm just going to select it. Again, I need to add in those properties. What are they? Well, I want my person to click. And when they click on that button, then something must happen. What must happen? Change color function must run. I haven't set up this function yet, but I'm about to change color. Okay, so at the moment it's undefined. I won't know what's going on. But here we literally have our function. So whenever somebody clicks on this, then we must execute our function. So let's figure out our function, all right, which is our next step over here. Fantastic. Let's go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function, okay, and what is my function going to be called? Well, I've just made it that. So change color, let's give it that. Okay, at the moment my parameters are going to be empty. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first test if everything is working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just call my body BCS, there you are, my body. Okay, and I'm going to say style. What must be styled? My background color, please. And what must happen when somebody clicks on this? It must equal to, let's just say blue, because I don't think blue is in our array. Okay, and don't forget your full stop. And now we hold thumbs, we save, and we come to our index and refresh. Moment of truth, when we click on this, our background should be blue. If this is not working for you, that's okay. Take beat, go back and see where you may have gone wrong. Have you spelt everything exactly the same? Have you included these little single quotes on everything? Have you closed off your sentences with semicolons? Okay, so go and check. We can see that this is working. So this is our test to just check that it is working. We could also test and see, okay, instead of using the word blue, let's get it to actually call back a list, one of our array situations. So let's have a look. How we would do that is we'd say, okay, look in our colors array that we've created, and please give us option number 2. And remember, with when we create arrays, the first one is always a 0. So 0, 1, 2. Technically, if this is working and I say save and I come to my HTML, it should be green because 0, 1, 2, fantastic. So again, we know this is working. So this is just a test. This isn't helping us, right? Because we actually wanted to look at the random order of our array. We don't want to just use a specific color. We want, every time someone clicks, we want a random situation to happen, and this is where it gets now a little bit complicated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just comment this guy out because he's not really very helpful. And what we're going to try and do now is select a random value from our array. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Let's see, it's going to be rough. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose, again, a variable. This one is not a global, it's a local. So again, whatever's in this page, which would be here, that's why I'm using the word let, or the variable let random. Okay, and again, this is a standard JavaScript name. I'm going to use something called math floor. Okay, because if you know anything about random, it kind of goes from, it uses integers, and I don't have integers set up here. I have 1, 0, 1, 2, 3 full numbers. So math floor, go and check out on JavaScript. I'm on W3 Schools. Under JavaScript, go and check what math floor does. Literally rounds up the number. Or is it round down? It rounds it to the nearest integer. So rounds up or rounds down. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do first. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say math. Here comes my random. So again, if you're not so clear on what math random does, and you should spell it right, you can always go and check that out. But my math random, what is my math random looking for? Oops, it's looking for I'm going to divide it by my colors, which are in my array. So I'm looking for, not divide, times, sorry. So I'm looking to times this. Every time someone clicks, it needs to look at my colors array, and look at the full length and choose a random number, a random value from my list. Okay, so this is basically saying, hey, look over here and choose a random number. Make sure, you see, we had to make sure this was either a 1 and not a point something, else it would not work. Okay, so let's again, body, we're going to tell it to change, BCG, and what are we doing? Style again, background color, so there we go, background color, and what must it do? It must equal to colors, spell it like an American, colors, and then we're going to say inside here random. Okay, there we go. Alright, so now technically if I save this and I come and I refresh, every time I click, it's looking for a random color. Sometimes those colors may be one after the other, and what's so great is I can come here and I can add another color. Whoops, and I must just make sure that I use my little single quotation marks. So you see I can add to my beautiful list as long as I want it to be. Alright, so that is the end of our fun tutorial. Make sure that you can do this. It's not complicated at all, but it's getting you into how to work with JavaScript and how to create these functions and get cool things to happen. Next, we're going to look at hexadecimal values and how to create a hexadecimal, a random background every time we click. So thanks for joining me. Hopefully you got this right. I'll check you later.